Welcome to our deep dive into the life and work of Du Fu.
Yeah.
You know him as
A giant.
a giant of Chinese literature, often called the sage of poetry.
Right.
But his story is far from,
Typical.
the typical tale of a celebrated artist.
Right.
Today we're going to explore his poetry,
Yeah.
but also delve into that historical context, a life marked by poverty and displacement,
Right.
set against the backdrop of a crumbling dynasty.
I think what's fascinating about Du Fu is that his personal struggles seem to have fueled his empathy for the common people.
Yeah.
And that becomes a key theme woven throughout his poetry.
Yeah, his life was definitely not a walk in the park.
No.
I was reading about the Lushan Rebellion.
Yeah.
It seems like that period was particularly rough.
Right.
Do you think the constant upheaval around him influenced his writing at all?
The Lushan Rebellion was a turning point in Du Fu's life.
Yeah.
And in Chinese history.
Right.
Imagine the Tang Dynasty, this incredibly powerful empire, suddenly thrown into chaos.
Oh, wow.
Du Fu, already experiencing poverty, found himself constantly on the move,
Right.
displaced by conflict.
Right.
This wasn't just a personal struggle for him.
Yeah.
It became a reflection of the turmoil engulfing his nation.
It's almost hard to imagine creating art
Right.
when your world is literally falling apart around you.
Right.
But there's this interesting story about Du Fu's time in Chengdu
Yeah.
with his patron, Yuan Wu. Apparently, Du Fu, maybe after one too many drinks,
Yeah.
addressed Yuan Wu using his father's name.
It was
A huge social taboo.
a
Yeah.
huge faux pas at
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah.
You'd expect a serious backlash.
Right.
But what's remarkable is that Yuan Wu didn't take offense.
Yeah.
Instead, it reveals
Yeah.
a deep respect and understanding between them.
Right.
Remember, this was a time when patronage was crucial for artists.
Right.
This anecdote shows us that their relationship went beyond the typical patron-artist dynamic.
Yeah.
They had a genuine bond.
It makes you wonder, did that security, that feeling of genuine support, allow Du Fu to really focus on his craft during a time when everything else was so uncertain?
It's very likely.
Yeah.
Chengdu offered Du Fu a period of relative stability,
Uh-huh.
and Yuan Wu's financial support was crucial.
Right.
But more than that, the emotional support, the freedom to be himself
Yeah.
without fear of judgment, must have been incredibly valuable.
It's interesting how those details about his personality come through.
Yeah.
I mean, we often think of historical figures as these
Right.
distant, almost mythical beings, but moments like this remind us they were real people with flaws and complexities,
Yes.
just like us.
Exactly. And it's those personal details that make history come alive.
Right.
They help us connect with these figures
Yeah.
on a human level.
But sadly, even in Chengdu, the peace didn't last.
It didn't know.
Right, there was that rebellion,
Yeah.
led by Zhu Zidao,
Mhm.
Yan Wu's own deputy.
Yeah.
It's almost a Shakespearean twist, isn't it?
It is.
The betrayal, the shattering of this newfound stability.
It was a devastating blow for both Yuan Wu and for Du Fu.
Yeah.
But more than just a personal betrayal,
Right.
it reflected a much larger problem.
Yeah.
The decline of the Tang Dynasty's central authority.
Yeah.
Local governors were asserting their independence,
Right.
leading to widespread instability.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact on someone like Du Fu,
Yeah.
who was already vulnerable and displaced.
It's easy to get lost in the historical details,
Yeah,
but when you think about the human cost of this upheaval,
right.
it's really striking.
It is. And that's precisely what Du Fu captures in his poetry.
Yeah.
He doesn't just tell us about the battles and the political intrigue.
Yeah.
He gives us a glimpse into the lives of ordinary people caught in the crossfire.
Right.
He becomes a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes his work so powerful and enduring.
I was looking at some of the poems that he wrote during this period, and what struck me was the contrast.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have these incredibly vivid descriptions of nature, almost serene and idyllic.
Right.
Then on the other hand, there's this deep sense of sorrow and displacement.
Yeah.
It's like he's trying to reconcile the beauty of the world with the harsh realities of his time.
That's a really insightful observation.
Yeah.
Du Fu's poetry is full of these juxtapositions.
Right.
He doesn't shy away from the darkness.
Yeah.
But he also finds moments of light.
Right.
Even in the midst of chaos.
Yeah.
It's a testament to his resilience, his ability to find hope and meaning, even in the darkest of times.
And maybe even find a bit of joy.
Yes.
I came across a line in his
Yeah.
poem, hearing the news that the imperial army has recovered Henan and Hebei. With wine as my companion, I'm eager to return home. It sounds so optimistic, almost celebratory.
There's actually a fascinating linguistic detail in that line.
Oh, really?
The word Qingchen, often translated as springtime,
Yeah.
most likely refers to a type of wine.
Oh?
Popular during the Tang Dynasty.
Okay.
So this reveals a hidden layer of meaning.
Yeah.
Du Fu isn't just longing for spring.
Right.
He's anticipating a joyous homecoming, a celebration with friends and family fueled by good wine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like a secret message for those who know the cultural context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But it also shows his humanity, doesn't it? It does. That even amidst all the turmoil, he still finds moments of simple pleasure.
Absolutely. It reminds us that even in the darkest of times, people find ways to celebrate, to connect with each other,
Yeah.
to find moments of joy.
Right.
And for Du Fu, poetry was a way to capture and express those emotions, to make sense of the world around him.
Speaking of finding moments of peace, this brings us to Chengdu,
Yes.
a place where Du Fu experienced a remarkable surge of creativity.
It was.
Over 430 poems.
Yes.
Nearly a third of his known works were written during his time there. It makes you wonder, how did he manage such prolific output amidst everything he'd been through?
Well, Quizzo was in many ways a turning point for Du Fu.
Yeah.
It provided him with a much-needed period of stability.
Okay.
He had a government job managing farmland. He planted orchards.
Yeah.
And his family actively participated in the work.
Right.
This sense of routine of purpose allowed his creative spirit to flourish.
It's almost like the act of putting his experiences into words was a way for him to process the trauma of displacement and loss.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
Remember, he was still battling the psychological and emotional scars of the rebellion.
Right.
The constant fear of instability.
Right.
But in Quizzo, he found a community.
Yeah.
A sense of belonging.
Right.
This newfound stability, combined with the natural beauty of the region, seems to have ignited his creative drive.
So it wasn't just a place of refuge, it was a place of inspiration as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that Quizzo wasn't just a personal haven for Du Fu. He used his platform, his voice, to advocate for the people around him, particularly the women of Quizzo who faced immense hardship.
I'm really intrigued by this aspect of his work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one thing to write beautiful poems about nature or personal experiences,
Right.
but to use your art to speak out against injustice,
Yeah.
to give a voice to the marginalized,
Right.
that takes real courage.
It does. And it's part of what makes Du Fu such a compelling figure.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a talented poet. He was a man of conscience, a social commentator who wasn't afraid to use his art to challenge the status quo.
It almost feels like we're getting to know Du Fu on a deeper level now.
Yes.
Beyond just the poems themselves.
Right.
We're seeing the empathy, the humanity that drove his work.
And that empathy shines through in his poetry.
Yeah.
There's this touching anecdote about a widow who would often pick jujubes from a tree in front of Du Fu's cottage.
Oh, wow.
He never interfered, even when a tenant tried to build a fence to stop her. He even wrote a poem pleading for the woman,
Oh, wow.
acknowledging her poverty and urging compassion. These weren't just abstract concepts for him.
Yeah.
They were real people, real lives that he felt deeply connected to.
It's amazing to think that someone who had endured so much hardship himself could still find it in his heart to be so compassionate towards others.
It is.
He really does seem to have embodied that Sage of Poetry title.
He did.
Not just through his art,
Yeah.
but through his actions as well.
And this compassion wasn't limited to individual acts of kindness.
Right.
He used his poetry to address broader social issues, to challenge injustice, and to advocate for those who were often overlooked or silenced.
It's like his poetry became a bridge between his personal experiences and the larger social and political landscape of his time.
He was a poet of the people in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah.
His work wasn't confined to ivory towers or elite circles.
Right.
He brought poetry to the streets, to the everyday lives of ordinary people.
This is where it starts to get really interesting, because even though he found a sense of stability in Quizzo, his life was still far from easy.
Right.
We can't forget that he was battling multiple health issues at this time.
He was struggling with malaria diabetes.
Oh, wow.
And even suffered a stroke that left him partially paralyzed.
Oh, my goodness.
It's hard to fathom the physical and emotional toll these illnesses must have taken on him.
Yeah.
Yet he continued to write,
Right.
to create, to find beauty in the midst of pain.
That resilience is just incredible.
It is.
It makes you wonder, did the act of writing,
Yeah.
of pouring his experiences and emotions into poetry, become a form of therapy for him?
It's very likely.
Yeah.
Remember, this was a time long before modern medicine or mental health awareness.
Right.
Poetry may have been his way of coping,
Yeah.
of processing the trauma and hardship he'd endured.
Right.
It was his outlet, his way of making sense of a world that often felt chaotic and unjust.
So even though he'd found this creative haven in Guizhou, it seems his journey wasn't over yet.
It wasn't.
Eventually, he felt compelled to leave, continuing his travels through various cities.
Right.
What prompted him to leave a place that had offered him so much?
Well, there were several factors at play.
Okay.
His brother Duguan urged him to return to their ancestral home in Henan,
Okay.
a place Du Fu longed to see again.
Right.
But there was also the ever-present threat of conflict.
Yeah.
Rebels like Luoyang were destabilizing the region.
Right.
And even the capital Chengdu was under threat from the Tubo people.
Oh, wow.
Du Fu's travels were as much about survival as they were about finding a permanent home.
It's a stark reminder that even during times of relative peace, the threat of violence and displacement was never far away.
Right.
It makes you appreciate the courage it took to keep moving,
Yeah,
to keep creating, even when the world around you felt so uncertain.
absolutely. And it speaks to his unwavering spirit,
Right.
his determination to not let circumstance dictate his path.
Yeah.
He wasn't content to simply exist.
Right.
He wanted to live, to experience, to create, even if it meant facing hardship and uncertainty.
And that brings us to a rather unfortunate rumor surrounding his death.
Yes.
The story goes that he died from overeating after being given food and wine by a kind magistrate named Ni. Is there any truth to this tale?
It's a story that's been passed down through the centuries, but the evidence suggests it's more myth than reality.
So why do you think this particular story has persisted for so long?
I think it's partly due to the way it plays into certain stereotypes about artists.
Right.
The idea of the starving artist who, when finally given a taste of luxury, indulges to excess.
Yeah.
It fits a narrative that people are familiar with,
Yeah.
but the reality, as we'll see, is more complex.
Well, let's unpack that then. What does the evidence tell us about Du Fu's final days?
Well, his last confirmed poem, Lying in the Boat in the Wind,
Mm-hmm.
was written months after this supposed incident with Magistrate Nye.
So clearly he didn't die from a single indulgent meal.
It seems unlikely.
Yeah, so the rumor's been debunked. But it sounds like the actual circumstances of his death are still a bit of a mystery.
They are. We know he likely died in the winter of 770 A.D.,
Okay.
somewhere between Tanzhou and Yuoyang.
Right.
The exact cause remains unknown.
Yeah.
But what's important is that we separate fact from fiction and appreciate the complexity of his life and legacy.
I think it's a good reminder that history is rarely black and white.
It's not.
It's full of gaps and interpretations.
It is. And those gaps allow us to engage with the past in a more active way.
Right.
We're not just passively absorbing information.
No.
We're questioning, analyzing, trying to piece together a fuller picture.
Yeah, and in the case of Du Fu, that picture is one of resilience, compassion, and artistic brilliance.
Absolutely.
It's a legacy that extends far beyond the circumstances of his death.
It does. And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay.
As we delve into the fascinating story of Du Fu's posthumous rise to fame and the enduring impact he's had on Chinese literature and culture.
I'm looking forward to that. So we've covered a lot of ground on part one. Du Fu's early life, the turmoil of the Anlushan Rebellion, his time in Chengdu and Guizhou,
Yeah.
and even debunked a long-held rumor about his death.
Right.
It's clear this wasn't a man who lived an easy life.
No.
But even through hardship, he created some of the most enduring poetry in Chinese literature.
What's remarkable is that despite facing poverty, displacement, and illness, he never stopped observing the world around him.
Yeah.
His poetry becomes a window into the soul of a nation in crisis, but also a testament to the enduring human spirit.
It's like he took all that pain, all that uncertainty,
Right.
and transformed it into something beautiful and lasting.
Yeah.
His poems weren't just about his personal struggles.
Right.
They captured the essence of his era, the joys and sorrows of everyday people, and the timeless themes of love loss and the search for meaning.
Exactly. He wasn't just a poet. He was a chronicler of his times.
Yeah.
A social commentator and a voice for the voiceless.
And that voice, as we'll learn, didn't fade away after his death.
No, it didn't.
In fact, it was only after he was gone that his work truly began to gain the recognition it deserved.
Yeah.
This is where things get really interesting. The story of Du Fu's posthumous rise to fame is almost as compelling as his life itself.
It is, and it's a story that speaks volumes about the power of art to transcend time and connect us to the human experience.
So we've established that Du Fu didn't achieve widespread fame during his lifetime.
Right.
It seems almost unbelievable considering how highly he's regarded today.
Yeah.
What led to this shift? Was there a specific event or person who championed his work?
Well, there was a pivotal encounter that played a significant role in Du Fu's posthumous recognition.
Okay.
Picture this.
Yeah.
Du Fu's grandson, Du Sai,
Okay.
is on a journey to return his grandfather's remains to their ancestral home.
Okay.
Along the way, he crosses paths with Yuan Zhen,
Uh-huh.
a fellow poet who was already quite renowned at the time.
It sounds like fate intervened. What happened next?
This chance meeting turned out to be a turning point for Du Fu's legacy. Yuan Zhen was deeply moved by Du Fu's poetry,
Yeah.
recognizing its brilliance and depth.
Wow.
He wrote a glowing epitaph for Du Fu, praising his genius and lamenting the fact that he hadn't received wider recognition during his life.
It's almost like a literary resurrection.
It is.
Here's this man who spent his life battling poverty and displacement.
Right.
And decades after his death, another poet comes along and says, wait a minute, this work is extraordinary.
It's a powerful reminder that sometimes true greatness isn't recognized in its own time.
Right.
It takes a discerning eye, someone who can see beyond the surface and appreciate the depth and complexity of the work.
Yeah.
Yuan Zhen was that person for Du Fu.
What's really striking is that Yuan Zhen wasn't just any poet. He was already a celebrated figure in his own right.
He was.
The fact that he championed Du Fu's work must have carried a lot of weight.
Absolutely. Yuan Zhen's endorsement was crucial in bringing Du Fu's poetry to a wider audience.
Yeah.
His epitaph sparked a renewed interest in Du Fu's work,
Right.
leading to a rediscovery and reassessment of his legacy.
It's like those stories you hear about artists like Vincent van Gogh, whose genius was only truly appreciated after their death.
The parallels are definitely there. It makes you wonder how many brilliant artists, thinkers, and writers have gone unnoticed in their own time, only to be celebrated generations later.
It's a humbling thought, but what specifically about Du Fu's poetry resonated so deeply with people like Yuan Zhen? What set him apart from other poets of his era?
A lot of it comes down to his ability to connect personal experience with larger social and political issues.
Okay.
He was a master of capturing the complexities of his time,
Yeah.
the turmoil of a crumbling dynasty.
Yeah.
But he did it in a way that was both deeply personal and universally relatable.
So it wasn't just about beautiful language and imagery. There was a depth of feeling, a social conscience that shone through in his work.
Exactly. He didn't shy away from the difficult realities of his time.
Yeah.
The poverty, the suffering, the injustice. He brought those issues to the forefront, giving a voice to the voiceless through his poetry.
What?
That's a powerful thing, and it's what continues to resonate with readers even today.
So we've got this pivotal moment with Yuan Zhen, this rediscovery of Du Fu's work.
Yes.
What happened next? How did this translate into the lasting legacy he has today?
Well, Yuan Zhen's endorsement was just the beginning. From the Tang Dynasty onward, Du Fu's popularity soared.
Wow.
Scholars and poets studied his work intensely, producing numerous annotated collections and analyses of his poems.
So his work wasn't just read and enjoyed, it was dissected, debated, and analyzed in a scholarly context.
Precisely, collections like the 9 scholar annotations of Du Gongbu's poems and the biography of Du Fu demonstrate the level of scholarly attention his work received.
Yeah.
These in-depth analyses helped to cement his place as a cornerstone of Chinese literary tradition.
Yeah.
His poetry wasn't just admired, it was studied and revered.
It's amazing to think about the ripple effect of that one encounter between Du Fu's grandson and Yuan Zhen.
It is.
It led to centuries of scholarship and appreciation, solidifying Du Fu's status as one of the great.
It's a testament to the enduring power of art to connect us across time and cultures.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the dedication of those who recognized Du Fu's genius and worked to ensure that his legacy would live on.
So it wasn't just Yuan Zhen's initial recognition.
Yeah.
It was the continued efforts of scholars, poets, and admirers
Exactly.
who kept Du Fu's work alive and relevant for generations to come.
It's a collective effort, a chain of transmission that stretches across centuries, ensuring that Du Fu's voice continues to be heard.
That raises an interesting question. What exactly is it about Du Fu's poetry that has resonated so deeply with people across time and cultures? What is it about his work that continues to speak to us today?
I think it's the combination of his technical brilliance and his deep humanity.
Okay.
He was a master of language, able to craft verses that are both beautiful and profound.
Yeah.
But more importantly, he was a keen observer of the human condition.
Yeah.
He understood the complexities of life, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and tragedies that we all experience.
So it wasn't just about pretty words. There was real substance, real emotion behind the poetry.
Exactly.
He was able to tap into something universal, something that transcends the specifics of time and place.
His poems are windows into the human soul, exploring themes of love, loss, longing, displacement, and the search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic and uncertain.
And perhaps that's why his work continues to resonate with us today, even though he lived over 1,000 years ago.
Right.
We still grapple with many of the same issues he wrote about.
Yes, we do.
Social injustice, political turmoil, the search for peace and stability in a world that's constantly changing.
Precisely, Du Fu's work speaks to the enduring human spirit, our capacity for resilience, compassion, and the search for meaning in the face of adversity.
It's like he's saying, hey, I went through some tough times, but I found beauty and meaning in the world, and so can you.
That's a beautiful way to put it. His work is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's still hope, still beauty, still a reason to keep creating, to keep connecting with each other, and to keep searching for meaning in our lives.
And that brings us back to that title, Sage of Poetry. It seems to encompass more than just his technical skill.
It does.
It's about his wisdom, his empathy, and his ability to find meaning and beauty even in the midst of suffering.
Exactly. He wasn't just a poet, he was a philosopher,
Right.
a social commentator, and a voice for the voiceless.
Yeah.
His work wasn't just about art, it was about life in all its complexity and beauty.
So we've traced Du Fu's journey from relative obscurity to lasting fame, exploring the factors that led to his posthumous recognition and the enduring qualities of his work that continue to resonate with readers today.
Right.
But there's one more piece of the puzzle that I'm curious about.
Oh.
What does the term sage actually mean in the context of Chinese culture and literature?
Right.
Why is Du Fu specifically deserving of this title?
That's a great question. The term sage in Chinese culture goes beyond just being a wise person.
Okay.
It signifies someone who embodies the highest moral and intellectual virtues.
Yeah.
Someone who not only understands the world, but actively seeks to make it a better place.
So it's not just about intelligence or artistic talent.
Right.
It's about character compassion and a commitment to something larger than oneself.
Exactly. And that's what sets Du Fu apart.
Yeah.
He wasn't just a brilliant poet. He was a man of deep empathy and compassion.
Right.
He used his art to speak out against injustice, to give voice to the suffering, and to advocate for those who were marginalized or silenced.
So in a sense, his poetry was a form of activism.
Absolutely.
A way of using his platform to try and make a difference in the world.
Precisely. And that's what makes him a true sage of poetry.
Yeah.
His work wasn't just about aesthetics. It was about ethics. About using his art to promote justice and compassion.
His story is a powerful reminder that true greatness isn't just about talent or achievement.
No.
It's about using your gifts to serve something larger than yourself.
Yeah.
It's about making a positive impact on the world, even in the face of hardship and adversity.
Precisely. And that's a lesson that's just as relevant today as it was in Du Fu's time.
Well, we've explored Du Fu's life, his poetry, and his lasting legacy. It's been a fascinating journey, and I feel like I've gained a much deeper appreciation for this sage of poetry. But what about you, our listener? What stands out to you most in Du Fu's story? Is it his resilience in the face of adversity, his deep empathy for the common people, or the timeless power of his poetry to connect us across centuries and cultures?
Whatever resonates with you, I encourage you to explore Du Fu's work further and discover for yourself why he continues to be celebrated as one of the giants of Chinese literature. His poems offered a window into a fascinating historical period, but they also speak to the enduring human spirit, our capacity for love, loss, and the search for meaning in a world that's often challenging and unpredictable.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on Du Fu and his enduring legacy. Thanks for joining us. You know, it's incredible to think that we're still talking about Du Fu, a poet who lived over 1,000 years ago.
I know, it's amazing.
His work has truly stood the test of time.
It really has.
But I'm curious, what do you think it is about his poetry that continues to resonate with modern readers?
Whoa.
What makes him relevant today?
I think it's his ability to tap into the raw human experiences that we all share. You know, he wrote about poverty, displacement, war, illness.
Right.
Things that are sadly still very much a part of our world today.
So it's not just historical curiosity.
No.
His themes are universal, timeless.
Exactly. Whether you're reading his poems in the 8th century or the 21st, you can connect with his struggles, his joys, his search for meaning in a world that often feels chaotic.
Right.
His work reminds us that even though the world changes, the human heart remains the same.
Yeah.
We still long for connection, for beauty, for peace, for understanding.
And maybe that's why he's earned the title Sage of Poetry.
Right.
It's not just about beautiful language or technical skill. It's about a depth of understanding, a wisdom that speaks to the human condition.
That's a great point. The term sage implies a certain level of moral authority, a commitment to using your knowledge and insight to benefit others.
Right.
And Du Fu certainly embodied that.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to use his poetry to speak truth to power, to advocate for the marginalized, to challenge injustice.
So his poetry was a form of activism.
Absolutely.
A way of trying to make the world a better place.
Precisely. He wasn't content to simply observe the world.
Right.
He wanted to engage with it, to challenge it, to try and make a difference.
It's inspiring to think that even in the midst of personal hardship, he never lost sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah.
The suffering of others, the need for justice and compassion.
He really does embody the idea that art can be a powerful force for change.
Yeah.
A way to raise awareness, to inspire empathy, and to challenge the status quo.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Du Fu's life, his struggles, his triumphs, his enduring legacy. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listener? Any final thoughts or insights that you think are important to understanding Du Fu and his work?
I'd say this Du Fu story is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's still beauty to be found, still meaning to be made, still a reason to create and connect with others.
It's a beautiful message and one that feels particularly relevant in our own time.
It is, and I think that's part of the reason why Du Fu's work continues to resonate with readers today. His poems offer a window into a fascinating historical period, but they also speak to the enduring human spirit.
Right.
Our capacity for resilience, compassion, and the search for meaning in a world that's often challenging and unpredictable.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new perspective on Du Fu and his enduring legacy. Thanks for joining us.